My cousin begged me for help for the kids after ghosting me with a $65,000 loan I paid off alone. I said fine if she signed over the studio. Now I own it. And she sends the rent late. Like I owe her something. I woke up to the kind of silence that only existed in the Alaskan wilderness. No cars. No neighbors. Just wind nudging the windows and the distant creak of pine trees settling into the cold. But the silence didn't last. My phone was buzzing off the nightstand like it was possessed. 19 missed calls. All from the same 3 people. My cousin Marina, Uncle Leo, and Aunt Clara. I stared at the screen, blinking through the grogginess, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I hadn't heard from any of them in 10 years. Not since they hung me out to dry. I didn't answer. I just laid back and let the memories come rushing in. Back then I just turned 26, newly hired for a dream job with the Parks and Wildlife Service. I was saving every dollar for a down payment on a piece of land I'd found up near Denali. I had plans. Real ones. Then Marina had her big idea, the art studio. It's for the community, she'd said. A place where kids and artists can come together and create something beautiful. She'd gotten into some fancy mentorship program and needed the studio to qualify. And of course she didn't have the money. Uncle Leo and Aunt Clara came at me hard. You're single, Blair. No kids. No mortgage. You're doing great. We all have to make sacrifices for family, Aunt Clara had said, her voice syrupy and practiced. I didn't want to do it. My gut was screaming not to. But they wore me down. I co-signed a loan for $65,000. And like magic they disappeared. No updates. No repayments. Not even a thank you card. I spent the next 3 years paying down a debt I didn't even create. The land I was going to buy? Sold to someone else. The retreat I wanted to build? Gone. I learned to live without them. Built my life here, in the middle of nowhere, photographing wolves and ice-carved rivers. No calls. No birthdays. No awkward holiday Zooms. And then this. My phone lit up again. Aunt Clara, 8:02 a.m. Please, Blair. It's important. I didn't open the text. I didn't want to know. Not yet. Instead, I padded into the kitchen, turned on the kettle, and stared out the window at the pale blue of morning starting to edge over the mountains. The silence used to be a comfort. Now it felt like it was holding its breath. Another buzz. Uncle Leo, 8:04 a.m. Call us. It's about Marina. I set the phone down face down this time. Let it ring. Let them stew. Because when they abandoned me, I didn't get 19 missed calls. I didn't get apologies or explanations. I got nothing. Now they needed something. Of course they did. Curiosity clawed at the back of my mind, but I shoved it down. For now. I wasn't ready to reopen that door. Not yet. That was about 10 years ago. I still remember the night they asked me for the money like it just happened. I was sitting at the kitchen table of Uncle Leo and Aunt Clara's place in Anchorage, sipping weak chamomile tea and trying not to feel cornered. Marina had spread out blueprints and glossy brochures across the table, like she was pitching a multi-million-dollar startup. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes wide with excitement. It's called the North Light Studio, she said. It'll be part gallery, part workshop. There'll be open studio nights, kids' art camps, weekend pottery classes. Real community impact, you know? I nodded slowly, not because I agreed but because I didn't want to look like the bad guy. The idea wasn't terrible. Marina had always been passionate, artistic. But passion didn't pay back loans. And I'd seen enough projects like this sink before they even left the dock. How much are we talking? I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. 65, she said without hesitation. I need to show I have a dedicated space to qualify for the mentorship program. That means lease, renovations, licensing. It's all itemized here. She pushed a spreadsheet toward me. I didn't even look at it. I'm sorry, I said carefully. I just started my job. I'm saving for that land in Denali. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Uncle Leo cleared his throat. Blair, honey, you've always been the practical one. Smart with money. You've got good credit, no kids, stable income. You're in a position to help. I looked over at Aunt Clara, hoping she'd chime in with something reasonable. She didn't. You've always said family comes first, she said, folding her hands like she was leading a prayer. Marina's got a once-in-a-lifetime chance. She just needs a little support. Marina leaned forward, her voice soft. It's not a gift. It's a loan. I'll pay it back as soon as I get the grant. Promise. Something in my chest twisted. I should have said no again. I should have walked out. But then Aunt Clara laid the final blow. You're single, Blair. No mortgage. No medical bills. You've been lucky. That word lucky still stings. I wasn't lucky. I worked for everything. I took remote gigs in terrible weather, ate instant noodles for months to build my savings, drove a rusted Subaru that rattled every time I hit 40. But they made it sound like I had money falling out of my pockets. Like I owed them. So like a fool I agreed. I didn't give them the money outright. I co-signed the loan, a big, ugly commitment that tied my name to Marina's dream. We shook hands. Marina hugged me like I'd handed her the keys to her future. And for a little while it felt okay. The studio opened 6 weeks later. Marina posted glossy photos on Facebook, tagging me in exactly one post. Couldn't have done it without you, cuz. Then came the silence. She stopped replying to texts. Missed calls. Said she was super busy. The repayment date came and went. Nothing. I followed up for a few months, gently at first, then more firmly. No answers. Eventually the number was disconnected. And that was it. I paid the loan off over the next 5 years. Sold my Denali savings bonds. Picked up side gigs. Photographed weddings, for God's sake. Anything to make it manageable. They never said thank you. They never checked in. They just vanished. The buzzing didn't stop. By noon, I'd turned my phone face down twice, put it in a drawer once, and seriously considered checking it into the snow outside. But the screen kept lighting up. 7 new texts. 4 voicemails. One from a number I didn't recognize. I finally gave in and opened the last message. Aunt Clara, 11:43 a.m. Marina needs help, it's urgent. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. My heart wasn't racing. My blood wasn't boiling. It was worse than that. I just felt tired. Still, I replied. Me, what happened? She answered fast, like she'd been waiting by the phone. Aunt Clara, her studio went under. They mortgaged the house trying to save it. Now the bank's coming. She might lose the kids' home. We're doing everything we can, but Blair, she needs you. I sat down at the kitchen table. The same place I had once sat 10 years ago, with a folder full of financials and a sick feeling in my gut. Only this time I wasn't 26 and unsure. I was 36 and I knew exactly what was happening. They weren't calling because I was family. They were calling because they needed a bank. The worst part? They had the nerve to wrap it in guilt again. The kid's home. She needs you. We're doing everything we can. Like I hadn't already done everything I could. Like I hadn't ruined my own future to prop theirs up. I didn't text back right away. I stared out the window instead. The wind was picking up, brushing snow off the trees in soft little bursts. It was beautiful in a quiet, brutal kind of way. Like nature didn't care who owed what to whom. It just kept moving. The phone buzzed again. Uncle Leo, 12:07 p.m. Please call us back. We're not asking for much, just a little support while Marina figures things out. It's not for her. It's for the kids. There it was. The child sympathy angle. Same script, different year. I tapped the screen and opened the family group chat, the one I hadn't touched in years but apparently was still a part of. Marina had posted a blurry photo of her 2 boys, maybe 7 and 9 now, standing in front of the studio. One held a paintbrush. The other had a chocolate smear on his cheek. The caption read, "This place is all they've ever known." A few relatives had replied with heart emojis. I closed it. There was a time when that picture would have wrecked me. When I would have felt guilty enough to start transferring money before I finished my coffee. But not anymore. Because I knew what would happen if I gave in. They'd take it. Promise to pay me back. Swear this was different. And then vanish again. I picked up my phone, reread the messages, and did nothing. I had given them one future already. I wasn't going to give them another. We met at a cafe halfway between Anchorage and where I lived, a tiny roadside place with bad coffee and worse lighting. Neutral ground. I picked it for exactly that reason. I got there early. Marina walked in 10 minutes late, looking like someone who hadn't slept in a week. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, but not the casual kind. Her eyes were rimmed red, and her coat was buttoned wrong. She didn't even bother with small talk. "Thanks for coming," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. I nodded once. "What's going on?" She looked down at her chipped nails. "The studio's done. We're 2 months behind on the mortgage. The bank's talking foreclosure." I stayed quiet. She finally looked up. "They're gonna take the house, Blair. I know what I did back then. But I'm begging you. Please help me. For the kids." There it was again. For the kids. Always the kids. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "I never should have ghosted you." Just the assumption that guilt still worked. "How much?" I asked. Her lips trembled. 40,000. That would buy us time. We could refinance, maybe. No. She blinked. "What?" "I'm not giving you money," I said. "But I'll make you a deal." Her face tightened, like she'd expected tears and sympathy, not conditions. "You still legally own the studio property, right?" I asked. She hesitated. "Yeah, but I'll wire 40 grand directly to the mortgage company," I said. "Not to you. Not to Uncle Leo. Not to Aunt Clara. You don't touch a cent. But in exchange, you sign over full ownership of the studio to me. Today. Her mouth fell open. That building was my dream. No, I said calmly. It was mine once. She stared at me like she was trying to see who I'd become. This is extortion, she said bitterly. No, I replied. This is business. The same way you treated me 10 years ago. You got what you wanted and then you vanished. You made this transactional. I'm just keeping it that way. She looked down at the table. Her hands were shaking now. The studio's all I have, she whispered. Not true, I said. You've got a house, 2 kids, and a husband who should be helping you, not me. But here you are. Again. For a moment, I thought she'd walk out. But desperation is a powerful thing. What happens if I say no? She asked quietly. Then I finish my coffee, drive home, and this conversation never happened. She rubbed her eyes, then reached into her purse and pulled out a thin envelope. It's already notarized, she said, voice flat. My lawyer drew it up last week. I knew this was the only way you'd even show. She slid it across the table. I didn't touch it right away. I let the silence settle. Then I reached for the envelope, folded it into my coat pocket, and stood up. Thanks, I said. Marina didn't look at me as I left. It took 2 months to renovate the studio. I didn't change everything, the bones were still good, but I made it mine. The cracked paint came down. The floors were sanded and sealed. I knocked out the cheap shelves, cleared out the dusty donation bins, and installed gallery lighting. Where Marina once hung dream catchers and spray-painted protest banners, I mounted frame photos of wolves mid-howl, eagle talons mid-flight, the untouched beauty of the land I loved. The new name went up in clean lettering over the front door, Northernlands Gallery and Education Center. Below that, smaller letters, Wildlife Through the Eyes of Alaska. I hired a local science teacher to run weekend classes for kids. Set up workshops for visiting hikers and photojournalists. Launched a free program for high schoolers to borrow gear and submit their work for exhibition. The place thrived. I didn't hear from Marina much, just a short thank you text with no punctuation and a lukewarm, hope things work out, from Aunt Clara. But I knew they were still in the house. And I knew the resentment was coming. It didn't take long. Rent was due on the 1st of the month. I set it low, way lower than what I could have charged for a space that size, and offered a flexible payment window. Marina signed the agreement herself in her neat, loopy handwriting. But she was late the very first month. Not by a day. By 12. I waited until the 13th, then sent a reminder. Simple. Polite. On the 16th I sent a second one. This time with a scanned copy of the agreement highlighted. She replied late that night. Marina, seriously? I thought this wasn't gonna be like a landlord thing. This place is part of our history. I didn't respond. On the 20th I mailed a formal notice. Just 1 page. Clear language. Final reminder. I wasn't playing a role in her story anymore. Not the ATM. Not the fallback plan. And definitely not the cousin who'd let it slide. A week later I found an envelope slipped under the gallery door. Inside was a check, postmarked 3 days late, and a sticky note. Didn't realize you'd go full corporate. No signature. I put the note in the trash and cashed the check the same day. The showdown came quicker than I expected. It was a Thursday afternoon, slow and quiet in the gallery. A couple of tourists wandered through, snapping phone pics of the exhibits, murmuring about the wolves. I was in the back office balancing invoices when the bell above the door gave a sharp jingle. I looked up to see Marina standing there, arms crossed, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Behind her were Uncle Leo and Aunt Clara. He wore that same smug windbreaker he always wore to family barbecues. She clutched her purse like she expected me to snatch it. I stood. If you're here about rent, you're already paid through next week. Marina's voice cracked first. This wasn't supposed to be business. No. I asked. You made it business the moment you left me holding that loan for 10 years. Aunt Clara stepped forward, her voice syrupy sweet. Blair, honey, we know emotions ran high. But you have to admit, this agreement was a little predatory. I offered. Uncle Leo didn't bother with sugar. That space meant something to this family. And you used Marina's desperation to steal it out from under her. I actually laughed. She signed it. Willingly. You want to talk predatory? Let's talk about the 65 grand you convinced me to co-sign when I was 26. That was different, he snapped. It always is when you're the one asking, I said. But the second I draw a boundary, suddenly I'm a monster. Marina's eyes filled, but no tears fell. You didn't even blink when I asked for help. You just named your price. Like you were waiting for me to fail. You already failed, I said, calm as a frozen lake. The moment you vanished and left me paying your debt in silence. Uncle Leo stepped forward, puffing up. We'll take this to court. I leaned against the desk. Go ahead. The contract's airtight. Notarized, time-stamped, filed. We followed all state statutes. You'll lose. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Clara looked shaken. How can you be so cold to your own blood? I was cold every winter. I couldn't afford heating oil because I was making loan payments for someone else's dream, I said. Don't talk to me about blood. Blood didn't return my calls when I was drowning. They didn't say another word. By the next week, I got a formal letter from a small-town lawyer down in Palmer alleging exploitative asset transfer under duress. My attorney called me laughing. 3 days later, the suit was dismissed. Turns out notarized desperation is still legally binding. The legal win didn't feel like a celebration. It just felt done. My lawyer emailed me the final dismissal notice with a smiley face emoji and the words "that's that." I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the PDF for a long time, then closed it and went for a walk behind the gallery. Fall had started to slip in. The air was crisp, sharp in my lungs. I watched a crow pick at something in the gravel and thought about how many years I'd spent wondering if I'd overreacted, if maybe I was the one who broke the family. Turned out, all I'd done was stop playing along. Word got around town faster than I expected. Maybe it was Marina's failed lawsuit, or maybe it was just gossip doing what it does best. Either way, the tide shifted quick. The local art scene, the same one that once praised Marina's visionary community space, started keeping their distance. The gallery's Facebook page had a handful of vague comments about truths coming to light and supporting integrity. One artist even tagged me in a post thanking me for reclaiming something that was stolen twice, once financially and once emotionally. Marina stayed quiet mostly. Her social media went dark. Her name stopped popping up in town newsletters. And about 3 months later, the family home was listed online. Aunt Clara tried to frame it like a fresh start, downsizing, she called it in one group email. But I heard from a friend at the bank that the foreclosure wasn't optional. They'd lost it. The house they'd mortgaged to save the studio that had become mine. I didn't gloat. I didn't reply to the email. I just stood inside the gallery one evening, the last light slanting in across the floor, and looked at a framed photo I'd hung by the front desk. A fox mid-leap, frozen in snow, so perfectly timed it didn't look real. And I thought, this is what I was supposed to be building a decade ago. This is what they took from me. And somehow what they gave me too. I had lost years. Dreams. Money. But I'd gained something they never counted on. Freedom. 1 year later, everything was quiet. The gallery was thriving. Schools brought kids in on field trips. A local conservation group held workshops in the back room every other Saturday. One of my bear photos had even landed in a national wildlife magazine. I had built what I wanted, finally, and nobody could take it this time. Then one morning in April, I opened my inbox and saw them. 2 emails. Subject, reaching out, from Marina. Subject, please read this, from Aunt Clara. I stared at the screen for a long time before clicking either. Marina's email was first. A few paragraphs, no punctuation, like she'd typed it in one breath. Blair, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted to try anyway. I've been thinking about everything the past year, and I just wanted to say I'm sorry, not just for the money, but for how I made you feel. I should have reached out sooner. I should have been better. The boys still ask about you, especially Liam. He started asking about Aunt Blair a lot lately. I don't know what to tell him. I know you're busy, but maybe we could talk sometime, even just a call. Then Clara's. Blair, sweetheart, I know it's been a painful road for all of us, but I hope you can find a way to let the past rest. Marina is trying. We all made mistakes. But Liam's been asking questions about you, and I think you should hear that. Maybe it's time to come back together, even just a little. Think about it. With love, Aunt Clara. It should have hit me harder. A year ago, maybe even 6 months ago, I might have cried reading those. I might have believed them. But something had changed in me, something I had to protect. I sat there for a while, sipping my coffee, listening to the wind press against the windows. Then I highlighted both messages and clicked delete. Not out of anger. Not even revenge. Just peace. I didn't need one more conversation. I didn't need another promise that wouldn't be kept. I had the gallery. The land. My work. My quiet. They had my silence. And that was more final than any goodbye.